Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co-host, Jocelyn Turner. I tell you what, I would say these Tuesdays are rolling around, but we had a special week. We actually did a special podcast a couple of nights ago. So when we thought about doing this podcast, Dr. Kane wanted to do it multiple days of the week, and I've been kicking and screaming saying, no, just one day a week. But anywho, we are excited tonight as we continue the discussion on voting, because we all know the impact of voting or not voting. And we have a distinguished guest with us, Dr. Marcella Washington. I'll bring her on in a moment. I would first like to acknowledge our behind the scenes guy, usually, but who has come from behind the scenes this evening, and that is our technology wizard, as he refers to himself, Tyrone Jackson. How are you doing this evening, Tyrone?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for asking, Miss Jocelyn. I was saying to you earlier, it's a Jocelyn day, beautiful day in Northeast Florida.
He's referring to the weather, because I always comment on how beautiful it is in Florida. But you know, Tyrone, I read something that was very disturbing earlier, saying that Jacksonville is one of the hottest cities as far as temperature, extreme temperatures this past summer. So we want to make sure that people are remembering to stay hydrated. And obviously our regular viewers can see that there's a face that's missing tonight, and that is Dr. Kane. He may or may not be joining us, but Dr. Washington, if Tyrone decides to go behind the camera, it's girl power tonight. I think we can do it.
Yeah. Yes. But don't leave, Tyrone. You don't have to leave, but yes.
No. Dr. Kane told me to make sure to stay up front. Don't let those ladies take over. Look at me blaming Dr. Kane, and he ain't even here.
Not even here. So as I said, we have with us Dr. Marcella Washington. I'm going to let Dr. Washington start out by just telling us and our audience a little bit about yourself and your background. Okay. And your interest in this area.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Marcella Washington. Actually, I'm a native of Jacksonville, Florida. I was born and raised here, attended all the public schools, graduated from Stanton High School in the 1960s. Then I went on to college and graduate school, but I'm a professor of political science, a retired professor of political science. And I've taught American government, Texas government, state and local government, international relations. But my last job was teaching at Florida State College. I did that for 28 years as a professor of political science, and I was involved, I'm happy to say, also with starting the first faculty union. I was the first president of the union there at FSCJ. So we got that done. But overall, just interested in Black politics, women's issues, and also just teaching the community as much as I can about government and the structure of government and the procedures. Things like the Electoral College and the presidential primaries and how it's different from the election we're having right now, and all the intricate details of American government that have taken me years to learn, that I would like to pass on now to everyone. I can do that now. Yes.
Wow, what an awesome career. And you mentioned things that many people don't understand. I know when the elections come, particularly the presidential election, yes, that's when we start hearing about Electoral College. And to be honest with you, Dr. Washington, I've never really understood that. Can you explain what is the Electoral College and who gets to be a part of it?
Yes, Let me first begin by saying when it comes to electing the president of the United States and the vice president, it is all an indirect process. Voters do not directly, for example, nominate the candidate for president, vice president. That's
Uh-oh. Tyrone, can you hear her?
No, I cannot. It looks like we lost her.
Dr. Washington, we can't hear you.
I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, we can't hear you, unfortunately, Dr. Washington.
oh boy, that's
There you go. There you go.
I made some, but okay.
We can
Okay.
hear you now.
so should I start over?
Yes, please.
Okay, I don't want to bore anyone because I can
I know.
I can go on with this for a while.
No, I've had a chance to talk with you. Don't worry about boring anyone, okay? You got good
But
conversation.
basically, I want people to understand as best I can from what I know is that the Constitution does not guarantee a direct election of the president. Everything is done indirectly. So I'll skip the presidential primaries because we're through with that. But we still have to have the Democratic National Nominating Convention, which will begin next Monday, as you already know, and will last until the 22nd of August. And that's when Vice President Kamala Harris will officially be nominated, and Governor Walz from Minnesota will officially be nominated president and vice president, respectively. Okay, but that's done indirectly by the delegates. She already really has the nomination. That was done virtually a few days ago, but formally she will do that at the convention. Now about the Electoral College, I'll talk a little bit about that. What happens is that when you go to the polls in November and you vote for the candidate you want for president, vice president, because when you vote for the president, you automatically vote for the vice president. Let's say we vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. You're really not directly voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. You're really voting for the electors from Florida, and Florida, I think, has 30 electoral votes. So Florida has 30 electoral votes. And the way you determine the electoral votes is you add up the number of members that state has in the United States House. There are 435 members in the House, plus every state gets 2 senators. So Florida has 28 members in the House, plus 2, that makes 30 for Florida. So when you go to the polls and you vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, you're really saying, I want the 30 Democratic electors to win Florida. If you vote for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, if you're a Republican, you're really saying, I want the 30 Republican electors to win in Florida. Whoever gets the most popular vote, then that slate of electors will carry that state. So if Donald Trump gets more popular votes in Florida, the Republican electors will go to the Electoral College in December and give 30 electoral votes to Donald Trump. But if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz win Florida, then the Democratic electors from Florida will go to the Electoral College and give 30 electoral votes. And that's the way it works in every state. So every state gets a certain number. California is the largest state. It has the largest number of electoral votes. And so California has 54 electoral votes. And so you go state by state and you win the popular vote, and whoever gets the majority of the electoral votes. So as I said, there are 435 members in the House. There are 100 senators, plus you get 3. Can you give me an idea why? Where do we get this 3 to go in the Electoral College vote number? Where do you think the 3 may come from?
From the District of Columbia?
Yes, correct. The District of Columbia is not a state. So it was only in the 1960s that the Constitution was ratified to give the District of Columbia electoral votes. Think about this. All this time, the residents, prior to this amendment, which is in the Constitution, it's a 23rd Amendment. Prior to the 23rd Amendment, the residents of the District of Columbia could vote for president, but their votes were only popular votes. You've got to translate popular votes into the electoral votes. So now they get 3. So it's 538. Whoever gets 270 electoral votes, that person will be elected president and vice president. And they're usually together. So
I think I'm still confused, Dr.
Okay.
Dr. Washington.
Okay.
Get it where you say we have 30. So is my vote then influencing the popular vote is what influences the electoral?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
So Florida
Okay.
has, you got to understand that the framers of the Constitution never intended the people to actually vote for the president. They thought in every state at the time, the 13 original states, they would get together, the legislatures in those states would select people they wanted. And these electors would select the president. But now the popular vote, when we vote in every state, whoever gets the most votes. So when you'll see, for example, we know that probably, I don't want to say, but let's say, for example, Texas goes for Trump and Vance. I'm looking here, Texas has, I think, 40 electoral votes. So you just put that number 40 there and you keep going and see what the popular vote is in every state. And that's why your popular, the people's vote does matter, the vote does matter, but it has to be translated into the Electoral College vote. And the Electoral College doesn't even meet until December. So we don't officially have a president and vice president until the Electoral College meets, which I think is on the first Tuesday following the second Wednesday. I think there's a procedure for it, but I think it's December 17th when the Electoral College will meet. And I do want you to understand that when I talk about members of the House and the Senate, they're not the electors. You could be an elector. Who is an elector? An elector is, in Florida, 30 Democrats that the Democrats trust. They select their electors. The Republicans select 30 Republican electors. And then they wait to see who wins the presidential election in that state. And the best way, Ms. Dawson and I could try to explain it is that the presidential election is really held in each state. So it's state by state by state. And then you add up the Electoral College vote. Now I'm going to throw another monkey wrench into it by saying this. In Maine and Nebraska, they count their electoral votes a little differently, but it really, I don't know whether we have time to talk about that right now, but they just split their electoral votes differently. In every other state, though, in all of the other 48 states, it's a winner take all. Even remember in 2000, George W. Bush carried Florida by a little over 500, I think like 537 votes, something like that. But he got all of the state's Electoral College votes. So it's important that people go out and vote. Every vote counts because, especially this election, the former president is threatening to do things if there's a close election. It not only has to be a victory for the Democrats. If the Democrats plan to win, they've got to have a clear victory in especially those battleground states that we've been talking about: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, etc., Arizona. Then that's going to determine that actual Electoral College vote victory, and the number is 270. Does that help a little bit?
Wow. Well, hold on.
A lot of people.
I just want to say one. I want to put a pin in something you said and have you to repeat that. You said that the founders never originally intended for the people to elect the president.
Correct. And also, let me just say one more thing about this, because when I will tell my students this. When the Constitution was written, when we have the three branches of government that everyone knows about, the legislative branch, the executive branch, the judicial branch, we have a bicameral legislative branch. The Congress has the House of Representatives and the Senate. The executive branch would be the president, vice president. Judicial branch would be the Supreme Court. It's the only court mentioned in the Constitution, even though the Constitution allows for Congress to establish lower courts. The only unit or the only agency that people could directly elect when the Constitution was first written was members of the House of Representatives. And the framers gave them only 2 years in office, and they made their powers less than the Senate. The senators were originally appointed by the state legislatures. That did not change till about, maybe I got to go back, 1919, until we got I think it's the 17th Amendment that really changed that. And so the president, vice president, the Electoral College, the Senate appointed by the state legislatures, the Supreme Court appointed by a president who was also appointed by the Electoral College, confirmed by a Senate that was appointed by the state legislatures. So the more powerful the office was, the less it would have participatory democracy. And the only agency the framers thought that could be represented by the people would be the House of Representatives, and they would be elected for a 2-year term, and they would come back every 2 years and be elected. And there, even at the time, as everyone knows, and we all know this, that they decided that the membership of the House, the way you would determine how many members each state would have, would be by adding free people to indentured servant, excluding Native Americans, and include 3/5 of all other persons. That's where we get the 3/5 clause for the 3/5 compromise, where 3/5 or 60% of the Black population of slaves would be added to the slave states, and those that would boost the number of representatives those slave states would have in the House, so they could further embellish and improve and further slavery in the country.
So how, a lot of people always say, what difference does it make if I vote? My one vote won't count. How does one vote contribute to the collective decision?
First of all, it's our duty as citizens to do so. But I would also say, especially in this election, I would say to the average voter, well, do you want a return, or do you want white supremacy? Do you want a return to Jim Crow? Do you want Project 2025? Do you want American, whatever limited rights? And I would agree that African Americans, through all the pain and suffering and toil, we still have a long ways to go. Exactly, the new Jim Crow. And all the new laws and all the new barriers and even we may mention a little bit about the amendments they have on the ballot here in Florida. A couple of them. The first one, first of all, partisan election of school board members. Forget about that. That's going to hurt us because the Republicans are already wanting to take over the school districts. If they get that, they're going to get more. So we have to be cognizant. And I would tell people, being a citizen in a democracy is hard work. If you don't want to live in a democracy, I don't want to vote, I don't want to participate, well, then, we're going to end up with a man who says he will be dictator on day one, right? He'll be dictator on day one because we don't want to participate. And I do understand that even the Democratic Party has not done enough to show African American voters that it have not gotten the rewards, I think, for the votes we've given them. There's no doubt about that they have been slack, and I would blame the Democratic Party, white politicians, African American politicians, okay, also a part of this issue that have not stood up strong enough and advocated for change in our neighborhoods, in our communities, okay? But to put a finer point on it, I would say, do you feel you are a citizen of this nation? Your vote counts because you count as a person, and then see if they can get a little bit more interested in government. And part of the problem, I think, Joycelyn and Tyrone too, is that government is so complex and complicated. Right. We have a federal government, we have a state government, we have a local government, we have boards and commissions. And believe you me, and I teach it, but sometimes I'm overwhelmed by it. I have to go back and say, what are they talking about? These people never sleep, okay? They're sitting around in the legislature in Florida writing all kinds of bad laws. And in the city council, by the way, because they arranged the Jacksonville City Council. The Jacksonville City Council has 19 members, 14 districts, and 5 at large. And it's the 5 at large that I think are really the problem, because invite me back to talk about that, okay? Because
I wondered the same thing. Like, really, they could swing other things from happening. But I want to get back to voter apathy, because what happens when a large group of voters, the people, decide not to vote?
Well, we end up with Donald Trump, the lives of individuals get worse. And I think, I don't want to say leadership, because I'm a true believer that people can have a role in their own destiny and in their own democracy, because democracy again means government by the people. But I I grew up on Myrtle Avenue and Davis Street, and the house I lived in for years and the other one, they've all been torn down. The neighborhood is gone. I'm moving. I live in Arlington, but I want to move back to that part of the town. And my family's like, why? It's a lot of crime and all. But I want to be in the middle of it too. I want to go back and see what I can. Don't want to go back as a missionary or somebody to save people. But my job is maybe once in a while I can have I would like to have, and I did this last week. I want to have a school where I could go maybe 2 or 3 times before the election and do what I'm doing right now. Just educating people on what I know, and just saying, okay, you don't know about the city council structure? Let's have a little handout. Look at this. Voter education, I think it leads to, if we don't have a lot of voter education, you get voter apathy. So people are like, why should I vote? Well, if you knew how the system worked, you would vote. But because you don't understand that there are 5 at-large members of the council, all Republicans, and they are voting against, they just got rid of the diversity and equity and inclusion department that Mayor Deegan had established. They say, oh, we don't need that. We have the Human Rights Commission. As if that's enough for African American. You don't need very much. So we need, again, not only citizens to participate, we need better public elected officials. We need to hold people's feet to the fire. We need to be aware of their interest. We need to say, okay, if you're going to run as a Black Republican or even a Black Democrat, Democrats, I think, have a little bit more connection. But if you're going to run as a Black Republican, then just make sure that you understand how you're going to bring it home. But usually the Black Republicans who run, except for one here in Duval County, they represent. We have one at large. We had two Black Republicans at large, and they tended not to really cater to Black interests. And none of the at-large people do, because they're elected by everybody in Jacksonville. So they don't have a district. And so when it's just a complicated system that works to dilute Black participation, okay? And there are all kinds of little schemes out there. As I said, some of this amendment to have partisan election of school board members is an example of that. We must vote against that as a group.
So if you're just tuning in, if you're just tuning in, we are learning from Dr. Marcella Washington. If you have a question for Dr. Washington, you can dial in 904-800-8403. Again, 904-800-8403. Dr. Washington, can you give me an example of where voter turnout changed the outcome of an election?
I think maybe it wasn't so much, but I think Mayor Deegan, I don't know how high the voter turnout, but she certainly was able, and she actually worked to get the vote out and to really whip the vote and get people interested. Because I think even Nate Monroe is an editorial writer for the Florida Times Union, and he had already predicted that, I don't think she's going to, I forget, Don Davis, I think, who ran against her, the Republican, he was favored to win, but she was able to do it. I think the black vote can always have an influence in an election where Blacks have a lever. Let me give you an example. When we look at Amendment 4 on the ballot, that's abortion access. That's a controversial issue, okay? Mm-hmm. But in Florida, as you know, the state legislature passed a law said, if you can't have an abortion after 6 weeks, okay? If you're 6 weeks pregnant, then if you're 7 weeks pregnant, forget about it. Well,
some people don't even know they're pregnant.
Many women may not know, and it's such a touchy and private issue. But now the issues on the ballot that will allow women to make an individual choice of their own, and how they deal with it, with their families or whatever. But it will allow for women to have access to abortion up to a viability, which is around 24 weeks. And I think most medical, maybe OBGYN doctors will say that's very self. We don't go that way because the Republicans say, oh, women have abortions up until birth. No, you don't. They lie and they twist. But I want to make this point. I think the Black vote will be crucial on this amendment. Recreational marijuana is another one, and partisan school board are the ones that I'm going to point out right now. Recreational marijuana, I think, first of all, they have a lot of money. They have already raised close to $60 million to get that proposition through. Abortion excess is not as good as about 35 million, maybe a little bit less, $1 million. But what I think could happen is the people who call themselves pro-life, many of them who are staunchly Republicans, who believe in the death penalty, who do not believe in equity, who do not believe in diversity, but claim they care about unborn children, they're going to try to use information, I think it's propaganda, to tell many Black men and women, you should not vote for this amendment because you're killing Black babies, okay? I can see that happening already.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way we should see it, only because for what I can understand, abortion it's not a collective choice. It's not like a group of people get together. I think it's an individual woman's decision to do that. And it's so private, I don't want to say too much more about it, because to me, it's such a private thing. It should not even be in the private sector, other than to say, we would like to see women not make that choice, but if that's their decision, if they do make that choice. So
Dr. Washington, before you go past that, I want to give this point. Okay. I actually picketed out. I not picketed, but I was out at the rally when Florida's law changed about abortion, and because I had a right to life, a pro-choice sign.
Yes.
A person came up to me and said, "Are you a Christian?"
Yeah.
And I was just like, you don't go there with me, right?
Yes.
And, are you a Christian? I said, let me ask you a question. I said, for all the folks that you're saying should keep their babies, how many, and those children end up in foster care, how many have you fostered and or adopted? I would if I could afford it. I said, exactly. That's a choice that you made.
But they're not adopting Black babies. They're not.
You choose. No, wait a minute. Let me finish. I said, you chose not to foster or adopt because you can't afford it. So when a woman makes the choice for herself to end that pregnancy, that's her choice based on the reasons that she knows, right? But are you a Christian? That's all she kept chanting to me. But are you a Christian? And I said, are you, Christian woman, how many children have you fostered or adopted? So anyway, we can go on and on with that. And that's my whole thing. So when you were saying that, the choice should be the individual. That's always been my thing.
Yeah, yes.
Be the individual.
And I do think that Dana Bash of CNN was interviewing J.D. Vance because they were asking about this question. And this is what Donald Trump says. It's been given over to the states. As if the states, it's not the state's decision. That's dictatorship, actually. It should be that individual woman's decision, Jocelyn. So yes, I'm with you and I hear you. But I also I don't want to be out there saying abortion, rah, rah, rah. But right. It should be a choice. And I think Black voters should vote pro-choice because it's a right. And just like any other right that we're voting for, voting rights, human rights, gay rights, civil rights, abortion rights, they all fall into that package.
And the right to own a gun.
And the right to own a gun if we want to.
So what if we did the same thing for it as we do the abortion, right? Your right to bear arms is your choice. I may choose not to bear to bear arms. But anyway, enough about me. Look who joined us. Senator
Hill.
Former State Senator Anthony C. Tony Hill. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Josh, and I'm doing great. I'm just standing with tiptoe anticipation of this conversation.
Well, we've already gone through so much already.
I've been on all the time. I've been listening to you when you started out.
Thank you.
I know she was breaking that electoral college down, wasn't she?
She broke it down. Joshua and our friend at the top,
Tyrone.
I just want you to know that I had the pleasure of 2 elections of being the electoral college.
Oh,
hello. I didn't say J-Lo. I said hello.
Okay,
And
well,
so I had the opportunity in 2000 when Gore, and I'm going to tell you something that's really funny about this, Joshua. So when I was in high school at Reebok, I want y'all to know that's the only high school in Florida. But
no,
when I was in high school, we had a civic teacher by the name of Miss Bustamante. That's a member of St. Paul AME Church. And Tyrone, Daryl Sharpton was in that class with me. And in 2000, he was an electoral college for Bush, and I was an electoral college for Gore. Who would have ever thought it? And so I would just add to that. And then again, I had the opportunity when President Obama went around in that 2008 election. I would just go on to say to you that winners takes all in Florida. So if we win in Florida, we will have citizens who are working in the campaign, because we were working in the campaign at that time. Also, am a former member of the Democratic National Committee. And Josh, I'm like Kenny Rogers. You got to know when to hold and when to fold, when to walk away. So, other folks came on, and so we kind of moved on to the side because we get elected every 4 years to be on the Democratic National Committee. And Dr. Washington is right. It's based on the electoral colleges members that you have, i.e. congressional people and the 2 senators. So now we have 28 congressional people and 2 senators, which comes to 30. So I don't want to rehash that, but all I want to say to you is, Tyrone and Johnson, the enemy sleeps in ships. While we sleeping, they on another ship. Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was all I can do is
Thank
exhale
you.
on that one, but yeah.
You need to tell us more about your electoral college story, Tony. I've never met. I've never. I teach it from afar, and I'm like, here you are. You were right there.
Johnson, can I let you in on another nugget?
Sure.
Dr. Washington and Tony Hill from Jacksonville, and we went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. Hello. She's a Delta, and I'm a Q. Hello.
Yeah, we both went to Lincoln, and we're from Jacksonville. But I think all of this information about government in general, again, is something that if we were just to do more public education and civic education, people would not be so apathetic. Yeah. And also they may see a way. What I also would like to see. And I used to tell my students this, I'm just looking. I think the parties need to do a better job, the Democratic Party especially, of candidate recruitment, recruiting good candidates who are going to go out there and run for office. Younger candidates, if we can get them, but certainly much more sophisticated. I run across, I do some things with certain organizations, and I meet people, I'm like, have you considered running for office? Or are you thinking about it? Because you look like you might be interested in running for office. So we don't want the same old people. I mean, in Jacksonville, we get the same old people running. And someone we need, just like Trump, now we got Vice President Kamala Harris, and she is now the fresh voice. And it's so interesting, Donald Trump is now the old man in the room. Okay, so now this is turning into such a refreshing election. It's so dynamic, and people are on fire for the vice president, and we got fingers crossed with that.
So speaking of that, wait a minute, one second. Wait a minute, Tony, hold on a second. We at this hour of the segment, don't go anywhere. We do a history maker moment. And Tyrone will cue that up. So if you all can just sit back and take a drink of water and don't go anywhere. We'll finish the discussion. Take it away, Tyrone.
Hello and welcome to Pause for the Truth History Minute, August 13th, 2024. Democracy is a system of government by the whole population, typically through elected representatives. Today, we're going to journey back in time to explore the fight for voting rights in Florida, a story of struggle, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Our focus will be on the period following World War II, a time when the nation grappled with its own identity and the promise of equality for all citizens. After the devastation of World War II, America found itself at a crossroads. The war against fascism abroad had exposed the hypocrisy of segregation and disenfranchisement at home. African Americans, who had bravely fought for their country, returned to a society that still denied them their basic rights, including the right to vote. In the South, and particularly in Florida, the legacy of Jim Crow loomed large, casting a long shadow over the lives of Black citizens. Despite the ratification of the 14th and 15th Amendments, which guaranteed equal protection under the law and the right to vote regardless of race, Southern states like Florida clung fiercely to their racist power structures. They implemented a range of discriminatory tactics designed to disenfranchise Black voters and maintain white supremacy. These tactics were not subtle. They were blatant attempts to suppress the Black vote. One of the most insidious tools of disenfranchisement was the poll tax. This required citizens to pay a fee in order to vote, a significant barrier for many African Americans who were trapped in poverty due to systemic racism and discrimination. Imagine being denied your fundamental right to choose your leaders simply because you couldn't afford a fee. It was a cruel system designed to keep Black voices out of the ballot box. The post-war period also saw the rise of a powerful force for change, the civil rights movement. Across the nation, courageous men and women, Black and white, stood shoulder to shoulder to demand justice and equality. From the Montgomery bus boycott to the March on Washington, their unwavering commitment to nonviolent resistance shook the conscience of America. This movement culminated in the passage of the landmark Voting Rights Act of 1965. This act outlawed discriminatory voting practices, including literacy tests and poll taxes, and mandated federal oversight of voter registration in states with a history of disenfranchisement. The Voting Rights Act marked a turning point in the fight for voting rights, ushering in an era of increased Black voter participation and political representation. The legacy of disenfranchisement, modern-day challenges for Florida voters. While the Voting Rights Act was a major victory, the struggle for equal voting rights is far from over. In recent years, we have witnessed a resurgence of voter suppression efforts, particularly in states like Florida with large minority populations. These efforts take many forms, from strict voter ID laws to cuts in early voting periods and registration purges that disproportionately disenfranchise minority voters. These modern-day barriers to voting are a stark reminder of the fragility of our democracy. They underscore the importance of remaining vigilant in the face of injustice and the need to continue the fight for equal access to the ballot box. We must remember the sacrifices made by those who came before us and honor their legacy by exercising our right to vote. Every vote, a seed of hope. The enduring power of the ballot box. The right to vote is not just a privilege, it's the cornerstone of our democracy. It is through our votes that we make our voices heard and hold our elected officials accountable. Every vote is a seed of hope, a testament to the belief that we can create a more just and equitable society for all. As we move forward, let us remember that the fight for voting rights is an ongoing struggle, one that demands our attention and action. Let us honor the legacy of those who fought so valiantly for the right to vote by exercising that right with pride and determination. Let us work together to create a future where every voice is heard and every vote counts. Thank you for joining us for this Pause for the Truth History Minute.
Wow, Tyrone, you did that tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about voting in local versus national elections. Why do local votes often have a more direct impact on daily life? And this may be the time, Dr. Washington, that you want to squeeze in some of those amendments if you didn't talk about all of them yet.
Yes. Well, first of all, people kind of can go down to the city council and to the local courts, and it's right there. So that's one way it kind of directly affects people. They see it. They see the garbage being picked up. They see the streets may not or may be paved. So they do see local governments in action. But I do want to make a point about the other amendments. We mentioned there will be 6 amendments on the ballot, okay? And we talked about a few of them won the partisan school board election, which I think is a bad idea. There's Amendment 2, right to hunt and fish. I don't know that much about that. It seems like some conservationists are not in favor of that one. And we talked about the recreational marijuana abortion, but there's number 5, and maybe Tony Hill can help me with this. It seems like it's going to reduce the measure. It's called Homestead Annual Inflation Adjustment. And I think it's going to reduce, it says here, the measure will reduce non-school local government property taxes by nearly 23 million. So it seems as if it's going to reduce local funding, and it's going to give a tax break to property owners via the homestead exemption in a certain way. So I'm not so sure about that. But the last one, Amendment 6, I do know I don't like this one. And it deals with public campaign financing. And in Florida, the governor, if you run for governor, if you run for lieutenant governor, if you run for Attorney General, Chief Financial Officer, Agriculture Commissioner, the members of the cabinet, you can be financed by the state, depending upon you raise a certain amount of money, and the state, you can get like federal financing, you can get state money to help you with your campaign. This amendment wants to get rid of that, so that rich people like Rick Scott and those kind of people could run for office. But if you are, let's say, a black state senator, and you want to run for governor, you might want this matching money. You might want this money to get given from the state coffers to help you with your campaign. By the way, there was an amendment by the state legislature in 2010 to stop this, and the same amendment has failed back then. So they're bringing it back again. I think local government is so important. If and it's so close to the people. When we saw that shooting at Dollar General, and how the city council members, and unfortunately, what it brought home was that Jacksonville have no African American representation in Congress, in the House of Representatives. And so we ended up with Aaron Bean coming down here and not saying a darn thing, but just looking like, oh, I'm here at this vigil that they had, and just not saying anything about it. And by the way, I wrote his office and asked them, had he made a statement right after the shooting? And he said he did something in social media. I think sooner or later he got he said something on the floor of the House. Somebody said he did, but overall, he has not paid attention to that. But he has made a lot of statements, as he should, about anti-Semitism on campus. But he has not made very little, if any, statement about a shooting in his district. One more thing about that: not only was the victim in his district, in Aaron Bean's district, but the shooter was from his district. So he should have been, Johnny on the spot right there, taking care of that business. But he doesn't feel he has to respond to blacks in Jacksonville because of that governor, Rick Scott. Who's our governor? Ron DeSantis. I'm sorry, Ron DeSantis, who has those who actually cracked up blacks and put them in 3 or 4 different districts and made sure their votes were diluted. So yeah, Ron DeSantis, and he's really quite forgettable now that he's not on the national stage anymore. Thank goodness. And he continues to do even more bad things, pass bad laws, shut down diversity programs. We want no diversity in Florida. We want to ban books in Florida, and all because why? He doesn't want white students to feel uncomfortable by learning about things like the 3/5 Compromise and the history of slavery, and that in the end, as you know, the standard adopted by the state board that said, in essence, blacks benefited from slavery. Okay, and this has made Florida a laughing stock in the United States, and it makes me feel very sad about where we are, because Jacksonville has the largest black population in the state, and we want to step up more.
So I was Senator. I'm still calling you Senator because once a senator, always a senator. Senator Hill, when Dr. Washington was talking about getting younger people to run for office, what influenced your decision to run for office? And what advice would you give to someone who's listening now and they're on the fence about it, to run or not?
Well, first of all, I would say, as Dr. Washington so eloquently put this to us, Tyrone and Joshua, elections have consequences. Period. Just put a period right there. Elections have consequences. And we can go back 4 years when Andrew Gillum ran against DeSantis. And DeSantis won about 10,000 votes. Elections have consequences. So we'll go a little bit further on that. I would say to you that on the 22nd of August, 6:30, we're going to meet at First Baptist Church of Oakland. Black men. The women don't took Johnson. The women don't took it and ran with it. So here come the black men now. Because we got black men sitting up in the barbershop in their man cave talking about Trump gave them a stimulus check. Hello. So here's the thing. You can't be what you can't see. Josh, did you hear what I just said? Mm-hmm. Tyrone, did you hear what I just said? You can't be what you can't see. Mm-hmm. So if we're not out there, then they won't see us out there. Yeah. And as Biggie used to say, if you don't know, now you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would just say to you, Johnson, we got to go back to the basics. We got to go back to the Mary Singletons, the Annette Gerardas, the Eddie Mae Stewarts, the Rodney Hurst. And we got to just talk to young people, because now it is a requirement that you teach civic in schools. Mm-hmm. Right? But our kids, for some reason, is skipping out of those classes and going to basketball and basket weaving or something. And we're missing out. So guess what? The person who turned out, they running again. Because none of us is caught on.
Wow.
None of us is caught on. So I would say to you that the thing that I would implore y'all with this pause for the truth is get more young people on this podcast to do interviews so other kids can see them.
Tyrone, I like that, Tony, because he says that all the time. So
that's what I'm saying. I mean, here's the thing, Johnson. If we keep doing the same thing over and over, we're going to get the same results. Mm-hmm. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. I wanted to say for Ms. Washington, exactly. You asked a question about wanting to move back to that area. That is a powerful reason, so people can see you and aspire to do what you've done. Right. See, sometimes it's not about what you say. It's about what people see.
And I want to see them too. It's a two-way street. Yes. I wish and my family's worried about safety, I guess. But the bottom line is, if we need to directly engage the community in such a powerful way. We need to talk to people. We got to meet them where they are. And we got to publicly call out these incidents. I don't know why these elected officials, once in a while, these city council members don't bring Channel 4 into their neighborhoods and say, look at this. Look at this. See where we are? We got to do, and then go back to city council and make that the issue. Because there are people, I know this is a fact, I taught at South Campus, there are people who, black and white, but mostly white, who've never even been across the bridge to look and know where Edward Waters University is, or Stanton is, or any Southdale is. They don't go over there. They don't know. Jacksonville is a city made up of different communities, and they don't interact very well. So I think we just got to get in there and do the work that's got to be done. But I saw Dr. Hossman had a question. She's a political scientist too. I think I saw it. Maybe it's in the chat. Did anyone see it? She says Go ahead. One thing I'd like the panelists to weigh in on are the recent reports of Republican senators being elected in low power. Yes. So Dr. Hossman is right. What happens is every state gets 2 senators. So Wyoming which has I don't think it has as many people as the District of Columbia. South Dakota, North Dakota, some of these states don't even have 1 million people, a little bit over 1 million, and they still get 2 senators, like Florida with, I don't know how many people we got now, I forget, 20-something million people. It's really, it is not participatory democracy. So it's minority rule, it's not majority rule. So these states that have low population, they're only allowed 1 member of the House, but they also get 2 senators. And the senators are that's where the power is. And so you can say, and most of them are Republicans. Now we do have in Ohio now a Democrat running for re-election, Sherrod Brown, and also in Montana, Senator Tester is running for re-election, and they have terrible opponents running against them. But they're 2 Democratic senators. But in Montana is a smaller state, but still, I hear her point. We have this idea the Senate is undemocratic. Okay, the Electoral College is undemocratic. The way we select a life term for judges and the way they're appointed undemocratic. By the way, circuit judges, I looked at this just for a minute, I'll stop. Circuit judges here in the 4th Judicial Circuit, I think I counted about 12 or 13 who are unopposed. You just look down the list. You can go to the Florida Division of Elections and look at the database for the candidates who are running, and they're all there, and you just see unopposed, 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 unopposed. So why should they do anything when no one's running against them?
Right.
So the answer, I think, is, and I've taught all my life. I taught on I taught at the community college level, which meant we're not a research institution. Our job is to teach. Okay, so talk, teach, American government all the time, state and local, and it's just in your brain, and you're like, I'm almost at the point, I just want to spit it out all the time. So I feel that I feel very strongly that there needs to be something within the community where people can be taught. I think that's what I would like to do more of, and not a lot. I don't want a full-time job. I've done that. I'm retired. But once in a while, before the election, I've done it once, twice, and I think that's where I think I can do my part rather than just talking and maybe participating in that way.
So, Johnson, as Dr. Washington comes with this dynamic conclusion, I would say to you, and pause for the truth, Dr. Kane, Tyrone,
Dr. Jones.
Dr. Jones. Hey, Pratt, how you doing?
How are you? How are you?
I'm doing great, Pratt.
Just doing great from the hospital, but I'm
okay.
In.
I got you. I would say to 3 of you that we need to put on a seminar, a workshop, and invite the community.
Yes.
We got to come off this podcast because most people don't know what we're casting. So we need to go out, just like the Northside Coalition, the other groups. We can't just go out fighting and everything about it, which we want to have them doing that, but there has to be some education in this. And I hear Dr. Washington just crying out that she wants to get back in the game. Well, Johnson, y'all have the network, y'all have the information. We need to be at family reunions. We need to be at church conventions. Or what's the other one? What's the other one we do, Josh? Where we invite the whole family to come to the church.
Friends and Family Day.
Huh? Friends and Family Day. Friends and Family Day, Dr. Jones. We need to get back to that basics, because what's happening is we're allowing the minority to drown out the majority. And that's what they're doing. They're drowning us out. And as you said earlier, and I want to give some dates out before we cut off. What time are we cutting off? At 7:30?
We can keep going.
Okay, so great. So I would say to you that we, as a concerned community, the Florida Medical Association and Pharmaceutical, we who are in the intelligentsia community, right? The fraternity sororities, the 100 Black men, we need to make sure that our folks know what's going on, and that, guess what? We got yard signs in our yard. I mean, Johnson, Dr. Jones, they say, there you go. They're going to another meeting. They're going to another meeting. Well, if people are watching what we're doing, we need to then demonstrate and walk the walk. We're saying, hey, this is who we're voting for. We're voting for Stanley Campbell. I mean, a lady just called me and said, I'm going with Marcel because somebody else. No, baby, you got to go with a Divine Nine brother. He's a member of Phi Beta Sigma. Hello. So I think a lot of times we wind up talking in circles and we talking to the same people that are passionate about what we are, but we have to say that same compassion in the community. Because just like Dr. Washington said, we got 5 at-large council people that is not beholden to no district like we have our district council people. So they're now all of a sudden, Mayor Deegan, progressive, doing things, now they want to curb spending. They're talking about, well, we need to pause for a few moments because we don't know what's going to happen and all that stuff. They don't know what's going to happen when they walk out from the city hall. But they didn't do that under Lenny Curry. They didn't do that under Lenny Curry. He had all kind of spending power. So now they see, because 2 or 3 of them want to run for mayor, so they don't want her to get any play or any positive. And I see Dr. Washington shaking her head. They don't want her to get nothing. So they can go out and run and say she didn't do anything. But
so
raise the taxes.
I want to ask a question. When we talk about democracy is at stake, what exactly does that mean? And what are the implications for democracy?
Democracy means that one woman, one man vote. And Donald Trump already told you, or at least he told a group, if y'all get me in, y'all ain't never got to do this anymore.
Yeah. I saw that.
Hello. Joshua, we got to wake up the people. So let me run these dates down for you. August 22nd, Dr. Jones, I need you to come on out there at operating room if you can. We don't want you to not saving the lives, but August the 22nd at 6:30, we're going to be at First Baptist Church of Oakland because we got to get into these barbershops. These guys go to these man caves on Saturdays and Fridays, and they just talk like they up there pontificating on politics. The next one would be September 21st. We're having the John Lewis bus come in, Joshua, Dr. Washington, and they're going to be doing a nonpartisan voter registration.
Okay.
Now, let me just say this to you. You keep hearing about the Republicans have over 1 million more votes, but they're not telling you how they're suppressing the other folks who had not voted, but they're still on the roll to vote. Hello, Dr. Washington. They're not telling you that. So that's another stem of voter suppression. They keep talking about they got 1 million more votes. Well, ain't no sense, Dr. Jones, ain't no sense of me voting. Ain't no sense of me voting. And so, but they're not telling the folks, come on in and renew your registration, right? Or get yourself back active and vote this November. Nobody's talking about that. That's why, Josh, we need to have meetings at family reunion, right? Birthdays, and any gathering where there's a large group of African American. I don't care if it's at concerts. We need to have that. So we're going to be doing that.
Just a second. If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Dr. Marcella Washington, former State Senator Tony Hill, and Dr. Kenneth Jones is pinch hitting tonight for Dr. Rogers Kane. If you have a question of our guests, you can dial in at 904-800-8403. Again, 904-800-8403. Dr. Jones, did you have a question? I'm gonna let you get back. Senator,
sorry I'm late, but I'm just wondering whether we discussed at all the long game, because what I see happen, everyone gets excited every 4 years just for the presidential election. And we forget that the State House, the City Council, all of those elections are very, very important because, as you can see, the Supreme Court is now pushing back state rights when it somehow would impact the quality of life of African Americans and in a negative way, or women in a negative way. But if one were to look, I remember in the 1970s, you could not get elected to Congress in Florida if you weren't a Democrat. The governors, everyone. But the Republicans figured out, let's go the long game and take control of the state house, which is what they have done. And look at the laws that are coming down from there, how negatively they impact African Americans, how negatively they impact women, how negatively they impact anyone who is not Caucasian. So it's a deliberate, and I think that within our community, we have to become that deliberate in finding candidates, putting them up, supporting them, talking about them, just letting people know that we have people that can run. But again, what did they do when they got control of the state house? They gerrymandered the voting districts. So this was all a well thought out plan, just like the 2025 plan is. That's exactly how well these people have thought it out. You know, you have a group of very evil people that sit and think of what can they do to destroy a community. So, but we have to respond and respond in a way that has a longevity to it.
So let me hitchhike on that thought with my Pratt brother. The 2025 plan, Johnson, is already in Florida.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
It's already in Florida.
Yes, it is.
They're banning books. They're taking control of women's body. Here's DeSantis never went and asked some of his deep pocket people, let's defeat Amendment 3, which is recreational marijuana. Now, here's the part that should stir us up in our community. At one time, they was arresting us for an ounce of marijuana and hitting the other guy that doesn't look like me and you, sister, that was doing cocaine, hitting her on the hand. Now we got a ballot initiative that will not only, you got to have a prescription from Dr. Jones, but you can now do recreational marijuana. We should be all over that. But again, the long game. The long game is Johnson, Dr. Jones, Dr. Washington. I served 17 years in the legislature. So that means that I had a walk around the park with redistricting. This is the first time in the history of the state of Florida we allow the executive branch to draw the lines.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, they came back, Dr. Jones, and said, okay, we want to do this. So here's the thing, Johnson. It's not enough for them. It's 30 electoral college people. That means 30 representatives from the congressional to the Senate. They were not satisfied with having 20. They want all of them. They want all the seats. And guess what? We around here sleeping while the enemy is working in shifts.
Well, we're not going to vote for the partisan school board members on Amendment 1, that's for sure. We're going to get the word out.
Now, Dr. Washington, that's why we need you to come out of that retirement, because it's not a day that goes by somebody calling me about these amendments.
Okay.
They're calling me.
I will be happy to send you something, a brief description of the amendment, but they're right there. I can send you a link. The Tallahassee Democrat has done a wonderful job. That's where I got my information on these amendments. So I will send
that's
you
why we need to right now go public with that website. What is the website?
I will send it to. I don't have it right, but I will.
All right,
it to you, and you can.
Joshua, when she sends it to me, I'll send it to you so y'all can put it out next week.
We said You
It's
said
a
it's in the
wonderful-
Tallahassee Democrat. Tyrone
It's a-
can look it up and hopefully he can
Yes.
post it before. But I want to
And you
get
can
back.
also go to the League of Women Voters. League of Women
Yeah.
Voters.
League of Women
So,
Voters.
I look at the ads that are on television, and I see the folks that are running for office. I don't even hear what they say that they will do for the people. All they say is they're supported by Donald Trump.
Yeah, Ron, that's right. It's a state senate seat that is from St. Johns County, and
Right.
I'm talking about the two.
Yes,
One is
that's the
supported
one
by
I'm
Ron
talking about.
DeSantis, and one it's a fight between the DeSantis, the back person, and the Trump back person, and they're spending millions of dollars because I see the ads all the time. I don't
All
live
the
in the
time.
district, so I have not taken really a lot
I
of.
haven't heard yet what they're gonna do,
Yeah.
other than and if people would just think about that, like, what are they gonna do for your families? Like, what value will they add to your communities? But all they're saying is they're Trump and DeSantis back, and that's it. That to them is good enough for them to get a vote.
You see, they
Yep.
understand the community they're in. They're in St.
Yeah.
Johns County.
Yep.
And
They understand the
look at where
community.
they are. I
Right.
mean, that's the MAGA crowd, okay? And those
Yep.
people, you see, you've got to understand what has happened. And we're still suffering the effects of Barack Obama being there for 8 years.
Yeah.
This is still the backlash. The hate that went down when he got elected and has continued today. And people need to understand that. A lot of people say, oh, well, we elected an African-American president, but look what happened in the states. Look how the states were taken over, because there are a lot of people that saw the ascendance of somebody black as meaning they are getting less. No one thinks about this is the United States in totality. All of us are successful. There are large groups in this country that do not want to see people of color successful. Okay? So they will do anything and everything to keep you from being successful, no matter how educated and qualified you are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But what they've got to remember, and that's why you talk to some chaps in the military, when Al Qaeda was firing rockets into the Humvees, they didn't stop in there and say, "Babe, by the way, how many Republicans are in there? How many Democrats? How many independents? Are they black? Are they white?" No, they were looked upon as Americans. And that is what has lost its way
Yes.
in this country.
Yeah.
In the fact that they're not looking at all of us benefiting from the great things that America has to offer. It is like, oh, you're getting something, but because you're getting something, that means I'm not getting something, even though I'm not qualified to get what you have. But the only qualification that I need to get what you have is the color of my skin.
Yes, exactly.
And that's a fact today. And I think a lot of young African Americans need to sit down and think about that and understand what has happened over the years and the struggles and the lives that have lost to get them to where they are, where they feel they can do whatever.
Mm-hmm. Thank you,
That's right.
Tyrone.
We got it up. We got it up.
Pulled it up. Yeah.
So
So
we got
just-
it up so the people can see it.
Yes. Okay, good. Good. Yes, that's it. And it goes through every amendment. It's very succinct, and it doesn't really take a position, but you can read it for yourselves. And then what we can do then is put out a flyer. And let me just say this, as Tyrone's putting it up there. There was a story in the news about a state house race where one candidate was considering. It had to do with a quick pick and Corrine Brown. I don't know if you followed anything about it, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is we don't want quick picks. We want Black voters to be aware of the issues, not just this is who you vote for. We want to say this is the office. The state house does this. The state senate does this. The city council does this. These are the districts. These are the positions up for election. A voter guide. We did it. I did it for DWIN 2 years ago. I wanted to do it this time. I didn't get a chance to do it, but we need some sort of funding to help with that, because I think if we can get a pamphlet out to voters just explaining
Right.
This is what this election is. It's a general election. What is that? What is a primary election? And it could be a fold out. This is the Senate. The Senate has 100 members. The state Senate has 30 members. 30? No, 20. How many? How many do the state Senate? I can't remember. Tony got
40, 40, 40, 40.
40 in the state Senate, 120 in the state house, right? So those are the things we need to inform people about as we get forward to what Dr. Jones is talking about, because I do think the first step as a teacher is to educate. And when you get that information out there, I think it makes a world of a difference.
Speaking of
So Joshua,
how do you think social media is influencing voter turnout and just the whole knowledge about voting?
well, let me put a plug right there. Dr. Jones, you hear Dr. Washington crying out.
Well, not crying,
You're around a lot of physicians. You remember the boule.
No, I'm not.
Okay, you're not in the boule. Well, then the boule. We need to talk, Joshua. We need to talk to the boule folks to tell them y'all got to put up money. Freedom is not free. Freedom is not free. The other side is doing what we supposed to be doing, but they're being funded by fat cats.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how we're going to have a PAC, an African American PAC in Duval County. Because what happens is they will slip and give people like me and other folks, and then have you falling for the okie doke.
Yeah,
that's where the quick fix come in. That's where the quick fix, because nobody wants to put any sweat equity in to look at the candidates and hear the issues. So I'm pleading to Dr. Jones and to Josh Turner to pull some people together, 10 or 15 of them.
I give monthly, by the way.
Okay, you give money. So what I'm saying is we got to give to something in Duval County. We need a black PAC, a political action committee, that we can get people like Dr. Washington rolling out a voter's guide. So the other folks don't want you to have a voter guide. Dr. Jones, the other folks don't want you to have a voter's guide.
Of course not.
Well, we did one for D-Win in 2022. I think, Tony, you saw it. I thought it was good. But we did that voluntarily. And the issue was we didn't have any money to get them printed. So if we do this, and
Doc, you hear her talking, don't you, Doc?
Yeah.
I don't even know how. I don't know if I'm.
Johnson, we need to move away from the podcast and have a real.
We can have both. Because we can post it on the voter guide on your website. We could have done that. But D-Win, I mean, you do know about this D-Win, Democratic Women Information Network. This group of women, 2 years ago, we did a guide and it was wonderful. I worked my tail off. I don't know if I can do that again right now. It takes a tremendous amount of work to get that done. And although I'm willing to do that, I'm just saying that if I can get people to start thinking about it, even just the major thing for us, I think, was not being able to get the word out. And I think even the Urban League has a billboard. It says vote. It just says vote. You know what I'm talking about? Downtown Urban League. Why can't we put billboards up with slogans about voting throughout the community? Like something like pass the word, it's time to vote. Or, make sure, some kind of catchy phrase about voting that will really get the people, not just a voter guide, voter education. The work we have to do is tremendous, and it's a lot of work, and we need black elected officials to buy into it as well. We can't.
Well, that's why I mentioned, Dr. Washington, that's why I mentioned social media, because younger folks, they're on social media. So how do you think social media can influence all of this?
I think I have TikTok. I don't even know how to use it. I don't have Facebook. I'm just old. And
Jocelyn, you just asked her a question about social media. You work for the health department. You don't retire from there. You were all over the social media. We got different aspects of what we can do in this community if we just sit down and come together. We got to come together. Dr. Washington just told you about D-Win. We got to get our community together in order for other folks to strive.
Let me just say this as a side. Have you guys talked to Wells Todd with Take 'em Down? Take 'em Down?
No.
Okay, there are all kinds of groups out there that are meeting. And Tony's right. So you got this group doing this with the Confederate monuments. You got another group doing this with D-Win. You got other groups as what about the Yellow House? Have you guys know about the Yellow House? Okay.
Yes.
You know about the Yellow House, right? There are things going on over there. They're having another meeting at the end of the month with all different Northside Coalition is there, all these groups. And I went to one of the meetings. I'm like, we just need a list of all. We need to start with a list of all of the active organizations in Duval County because people are doing things, but they're going hither and thither, and there's no coordination.
So it's time really to form a true consortium, like
Yes.
what you guys
Yes.
did before.
Yes.
Yes.
That's where, and then, for instance, if you're going to do education, somebody needs to sit down and figure out what's the budget, how much money we need to raise to get this accomplished, and that is something that we should do. Now,
So I hear you, Doc.
people with more time than I do, but
I got you.
But I could still participate.
Right.
I know we should build a consortium
Right.
and call it the Duval County, PAC, Political Action Committee, comprised of all of these individual organizations who bring something very unique to that consortium.
Yep.
And let me ask one more thing. How many of us have heard of this organization called Cuppa Jack? Cuppa Jack? You ever heard
Nope.
of that?
Nope.
Okay. That's a group of people who meet downtown they have Ron Salem, they have had the president of UNF, they have had Tracy Davis. These people have every 5 or 6 weeks, they have an event. You can look them up online and just see what they're doing. Now, they're primarily middle-class white people, but they're backed by some sort of organization. I haven't got to the root of it, but they're doing things in the community. They're bringing out people who are sort of the movers and shakers. And I think I know that they've had most of the powerful forces or in the culturally and politically in the community there. So that organization, I'm just mentioning it as an example of things that are going on that we just need to be aware of. Even we're not asking them to come into our group. I'm just saying there are things out there happening that we just need to be aware of, all these touchstones, and that there are groups doing things in Jacksonville. It's just not coordinated, as Dr. Jones said. It's not coordinated.
So let me just say this to you. And I saw Melissa in
Yes.
saying the NAACP. Well, the NAACP is nonpartisan. We're talking about survival for our community. And a lot of times that's going to be partisan. So we who are on this call tonight, on this podcast, and however many people that are on the podcast, Dr. Jones, Dr. King, and Sister Turner, y'all got to sit down now and come up with a meeting and a strategy to help our community.
We're doing it now by having the podcast for starters.
Right. And I don't disagree with you on that. But it's a lot of people y'all not touching.
That's
and
why
it's a lot of people not voting.
We got to,
and we can win. We're going to win this county on November the 5th. We're going to win Duval County. And the way we do that is now putting people in place to say something. In other words, we got to find our voice in our community. And it can't be the Northside Coalition, the NAACP, or this group over here, the Urban League. It has to be a collective group where people have buy-in and tie-in. Because Dr. Jones can't be to all the meetings. Dr. Washington, she's retired now.
Yes, I am.
Tony Hill, I'm retarded now. I'm sorry. I'm retired now. So you got Johnson Turner, you doing your thing. We got to have a safe place when it comes to body politics, and we can't wait every other 4 years to do this.
I agree.
We got to put a stake in the ground starting tonight.
So, Dr. Washington, you want to say something? Go ahead.
I just think Tony has a good idea. I think we can start that the group at the Yellow House, I think, is meeting in a few days. And my suggestion is we just begin with who we are. Can we get a list of organizations and umbrella that we can start with an umbrella? No action plan right now. Just let's start with who are we? Where are we? Where are these groups in Jacksonville? Like I mentioned, Take Them Down, Jax. And they go to the city council, and they're one of the reasons we got some of these Confederate monuments taken down. But they're like, nobody, we need people to join our organization. And they don't know, do they know about Pause for the Truth? Do they know about these other groups? We need some sort of coordination to begin with. And that's just, and I don't know where to go from there. But I would say that's what be my little input.
So I want to talk a little bit about people who choose not to vote again.
Okay.
What are the implications of non-participation on democracy?
Well, I'm going to chime in on that and say to you that elections have consequences. So when you don't vote, you are voting, because then the people who have suppressed our vote, they want you to think like that. Like, for example, Dr. Jones, they tell you right now over 1 million more Republicans than Democrats, but they don't tell you about the inactive people who can still vote on our side of the aisle. So that's called suppress the vote. That's suppressing the vote. And so we have to continue to let people know that we have power. We have power. And guess what, Dr. Jones? We the only people on this earth, God green earth, don't realize we got power.
Oh,
we don't even realize it. They tell us on a national scene, because they always come with the statistics about it's 50% or 80% African Americans in prison. It's 60% of African Americans got prostate cancer. And then yet and still we can elect a Barack Obama, and now we got a sister that's running that Donald Trump can only call her a bitch. That's offensive to me.
Okay, I know. But can I just interject? I think someone asked about the name of the person would Take Him Down. Jackson's name is Wells Todd. Wells, W-E-L-L-S, Todd.
Yeah, I put it in the chat.
I just wanted to make sure you got that, because he works so hard. He's such a wonderful person with what they're doing, what that group is doing.
So I want you to, Dr. Washington, answer the question that I asked about when people choose not to vote. What are the implications for democracy?
It withers and dies ultimately. You know, it cannot. You can't have a democratic system when 30% of the people are voting or participating. You can, but the majority will not rule. You're going to continue to get bad laws like the ones we get with from the state legislature. But also, the system has been so organized in such a way to thwart and to limit and to prevent participatory democracy. We got to understand that too. The barriers that are put in the way, no longer the poll tax, the white primary, the literacy test. There are new barriers that are being put in the way, and a lot of them are complicated, like these amendments, the way they're written, the way laws are written on the books. They sound like they are fair and equitable, and they're just the opposite. So it is a democracy in a sense, and the Republicans would say, you don't have a democracy, we have a constitutional republic. Have you heard Republicans say this? That's their argument, because what they're really saying, we don't want people to vote. We want appointments. We want indirect democracy. We want, not even indirect democracy. We want really a dictatorship, and we want Donald Trump to decide who's going to be on the Supreme Court, and he has. And now we have 3 Supreme Court justices, in part because the Democrats were outmaneuvered. When President Obama had the opportunity to appoint Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court, he should have demanded. He could have gone to Congress and given a State of the Union message. He could have had a press conference every day and made sure that Mitch McConnell was doing was unconstitutional. It's nothing in the Constitution that says you cannot consider a Supreme Court justice simply because your party is not in the majority when you are appointing a member to the Supreme Court. That does not exist. But that's what the argument that Mitch McConnell used against Barack Obama, and it worked.
But then they let Trump put Amy Barrett on the Supreme Court.
And not only that, Ruth Bader Ginsburg should have been told to get
retire.
Okay,
I agree.
You know what? I'm gonna say this because then I get emotional, and then I have to calm down because I can talk fast, and my students tell me this. But once Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because I can tell you this, if it was Republicans, she would have been off that court. But they were like, oh no, we need to keep her around because Hillary Clinton is going to be president and she'll be replaced by a woman, Roman president. That was a mistake that the Democrats made, and we paying mightily for it. Now,
well, as I said earlier, the Republicans have always outmaneuvered the Democrats. They think the long game.
Yes, you're right. They did.
I don't know where our think tank is, where they're located, but they're not making strategic decisions long term. I mean, I'm talking 20 years.
Yes.
I'm talking 30 years. That's how they're thinking.
Yes, you're right. You're right, Dr.
Yeah,
Jones.
We're thinking 4 years. 4 years is nothing. You could toss that out in a minute. Whatever the long game is, it has to be a 30-year game, a 20-year, you set it up. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Where do we want to be? Where do we want this country to be? What do we want this country to look like? Don't get excited over just an election, but get excited for the future of America.
So let me
So
give.
I want to, and we're nearing 8:00, by the way, but I wanted to end this with one last question, and then I'll give each of you an opportunity to give your final thoughts. Okay. I want to talk about the power of young votes. Yes. Explore how younger generations can influence future elections. Dr. Jones, when you were talking about thinking strategically, what issues are most important to them and how can they mobilize? I see them, I see some young people at UNF, for example, who don't like the war that's happening and all the people, the Pakistanians that are being murdered and such. Yeah. But so what are your thoughts for engaging younger voters in the long run of our democracy?
I mean, one of the most important from my perspective is educating people. I understand the Palestinian issue. That I mean, they're suffering on an apartheid process right now.
Sorry, I said
Yes. Just look at the data, compare that to South Africa. We don't have to even go down that road. But what happened to those students when they had a peaceful protest? They were all charged with the most bizarre things. I've never heard it. If that were the case, think of what would have happened when Martin Luther King and them were doing their protests. So in states like Florida, they will suppress your ability to protest. So then you have to think, what's my alternative? As a young person, education, getting into fields that you're absolutely necessary. And from the party's perspective, we have to make sure that the young people understand first the history, and then second, get them ready to compete in this world. Because you think about it, if you're not educated, you can't get the job you want, you're upset, and someone comes along and says, oh, I'm going to spray you with milk and honey. All you hear is milk and honey, and that's what you're going after, not understanding what that person is really planning to do to you. Mm-hmm. So we have to continue to educate. And don't start educating when people are in college. You can do it in high school here, which we know. So it's going to have to be done outside the school system, in churches, in community centers that are not owned by cities. That's where the education process has to go now.
Yep. So let me chime in.
So we have to get them into the churches and these locations to educate them about the history and then what has to be done going forward.
Yeah. Let me jump in right now because I got to get out of here. It's going on 8. I got to go get some signs for Stanley. But I would simply say to you that on the 22nd of August, 6:30, the 22nd of August, 6:30, we're going to meet at First Baptist Church to strategize how we go into these barbershops. That's on Jesse Street, 1036 Jesse Street, on the east side, and right off of A. Philip Randolph Boulevard. So meet us over there, because we're going to go into these barbershops 4x4, 3x3, or whatever we got to do so we can make sure that Trump does not get any African-American vote in 24. That's what we got to make sure that happens. But if we don't talk to them, that's not going to happen, because they're going to have their own conclusion of what's going on. I would say to you,
Brother Tony,
yes,
in response to that, and this is something that really irked me, and I had to sit down and talk to some people about it. In 2016, I was sitting in a barbershop and heard the guy saying, I'm voting for that guy. You know, he's a businessman. And, you know, I'm a businessman. And I stopped them. I said, have you checked his record? You realize if you were a good businessman and you filed bankruptcy so many times and left people stuck without payments or getting 10 cents on the dollar, would you consider yourself a good businessman? And they look at me, heck no. I said, well, read the guy's history. That's the person you're pushing up here saying he's a businessman. I said, understand what you're saying. Nobody had read the history. And therein goes again, education.
So Joshua, you hear what Doc's saying? Y'all need to have a executive committee meeting to figure out how do we move from the podcast to the people. And to bring, because you'll be surprised how many other folks want to get involved in this, but they don't know where to go.
Yeah, and see, and my answer to that is we do our part. Someone else has to hear this and then figure out what they can do. So it's 8 o'clock, after 8 o'clock, and I like to respect everyone's time.
Yeah.
You know, everyone has something to do. So thank you all. It's been a very enlightening conversation.
Thank you.
After the primary, once we know, you know, last week or Sunday night rather, we had Stanley Campbell on, who's vying to be our next senator here, and U.S. senator. So, you know, hopefully people will get out and vote in the primary for those positions that are trying to get to the general election in November. So this is the part of the podcast where we give each of our guests an opportunity to share their final thoughts. And I will start with Dr. Washington. Thank you so much for educating us on all of those wonderful historical facts. We really appreciate you pointing us in the direction of the Tallahassee Democrat and their explanation of the amendments and explaining the Electoral College. What are your final thoughts regarding tonight's podcast, Dr. Washington?
It was a pleasure just talking to people and meeting everybody. Dr. Jones, seeing Tony Hill again, seeing you again, too, seeing you and meeting you, Jocelyn. Just thank you so much for inviting me. Invite me back again. I will be happy, and I will follow up at the meeting at the Yellow House with the idea and remind them about this podcast and get the word around as much as I can and talk to people as you see them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Tony, Senator, what are your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic?
Well, I think we were spot on, and we put it down. Dr. Washington put it down where the ghosts can get it. So that's the common people out there. But here's the thing. We got early voting going on right now. We have an election that will culminate on August the 20th. We're going to meet on August 22nd at First Baptist Church, 6:30, to talk about how we're going to strategize getting into these barbershops. Early voting begins at 10 a.m. and ends at 6 p.m. The last day to early vote will be Sunday. And then on Tuesday will be the election. The elections open up at 7 a.m. in the morning and close at 7 p.m. But now the difference between early voting and election day, early vote, you can vote anywhere in the county. On election day, you got to vote in your precinct. You must vote in your precinct, right? And then as we get into to November, the last day to register to vote is going to be October. And I don't have that date, but if they go on the website, they will see it, the Supervisor of Elections Office website, that would tell them what date the early voting, voter registration. Right now, I see it's for the primary was July 22nd. And then voter registration for us on the, I want to say it'll be October 30th, not October 30th, but October the 5th.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yep, I think it's October the 5th or 3rd. That's the last day that you can play in this game on November the 5th, 2024. So those are the sentiments that I would sit out to the folks. We got to move past the podcast. I know, Josh, you keep saying we're doing our part and everything, but we're too deep in this to leave somebody out. So I pray and hope that Dr. Jones, that we can get together with the fraternity, with also with the Divine Nine. I'm hoping those guys show up on the 22nd so we can begin to move the needle. But we have a chance. And here's the thing that Stacey Abrams taught us all. It's not about how many people you have registered to vote. It's how many people you get out to vote.
Get out to vote. Absolutely.
Thank you so very much, Josh, for giving us the opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. And the voter registration or party change deadline is Monday, October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
Just FYI. And
FYI.
National Voter Registration Day is September 17th, and there are going to be some activities associated with that. And the senator also referenced something that they're doing on September 21st. So stay tuned, follow folks to hear what's going on. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for joining us tonight. What are your final thoughts regarding
Our
tonight?
final thoughts is we have to continue to educate people to the facts.
Yes.
Stay with the facts, educate, because people are listening and people are drawing conclusions with misinformation. And I've seen it and I've listened to it. And then when you start to engage and say, do you know this? Here it is. They give you this stare like, no, I didn't know anything about that. But they had already made up their mind based on misinformation. So we know misinformation is there. We have got to work on providing the correct information.
Thank you so much. And we're going to put up some important sites on our website. And so we're going to go ahead and end the podcast. To our viewers who always tune in, thank you. And to those who may be tuning in for the first time, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can get the word out. When Tony talked about how are we going to get the word out more, that's by you subscribing to our YouTube channel and encouraging others to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tony, did you have one other thing you want to say?
One more thought there. On September 25th, the 100 Black Men will be doing a forum at the Jesse DuPont Ball Center, the Jesse Ball DuPont Center. And I want to say that's going to be 6 o'clock, but that's on the 25th of September, the 100 Black Men.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, as always, for tuning in to Pause for the Truth. Thank you to our guests for taking an hour and a half out of your time tonight. I know we asked for an hour, but we really appreciate it. You were so engaging that we wanted to make sure that we didn't leave anything out. And again, tune in next week for Pause for the Truth as we continue to hopefully educate you about something that could have a positive impact on you as well as your family. Good night.
Now, you see why you need to tune in every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's been an absolute joy having you with us today on Pause for the Truth. Dr. Rogers Kane and Ms. Jocelyn Turner are so grateful for your time and support. We know you have a lot of choices, and we're thrilled you chose to spend your time with us. It means the world to us. A massive shout out out to Tyrone Jackson of Call Tyrone Service for making everything run smoothly behind the scenes. Tyrone, you're truly a whiz. Remember, folks, we're here every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with more insights, stories, and truths. So mark your calendars, set those reminders, and join us for another exciting episode. Thank you once again, and we can't wait to connect with you next week. Stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay tuned. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, link with us on LinkedIn, and most of all, subscribe to us on YouTube. Never forget to pause,